Welcome everybody. I did press. Thanks a lot for coming. We are requested to give these talks in English. And yeah, why are we here? This Geek Night is sponsored by GOTO conferences. And we thank GOTO and Gary for this. The first talk is about how NoSQL fits in a polyglot persistence world. So I assume that you already all know what NoSQL is. So this is no introduction, just a few experiences from my point of view. But before we start, and I hope I'm loud enough, so if anything is unclear in the volume, then feel free to tell me so or ask. Just one important dates we want to like to mention. Of course, in a few weeks, in 2 weeks, we have 1.5 weeks, we have the GOTO May in Copenhagen, GOTO and QCon, two very interesting international conferences I only can recommend. 31st of May is Martin Fowler and Mr. Sandelaj presenting their newest NoSQL book. I will just come to that in a few seconds. And then 12th June we have a second event like this, hopefully, if I can reserve this room again. So write it down again, 12th of June, Geek Night number 2 here on Agile, and I hope this might be also interesting for you. Not with me, but I'm sure with interesting Agile speakers. And then in October, of course, there's GOTO in Aarhus, and if you can come, meet us and talk to us again. Okay, let's start. I want to give a little introduction, what happened in NoSQL, what's interesting, perhaps what's funny, and then a little overview and issues written down in the abstract. Yeah, NoSQL is of course a success story, and you know why? I just read about the latest developer skills, and we have on number 7 Hadoop, and on number 2 we have MongoDB, so we beat iOS, and I think it's a great achievement to beat Apple and iOS. So everything is increasing, you don't need the charts, but if you want, take a shot, and you can get, of course, the slides, of course, if you want. Many interesting books will come out. This book is already out from Shashank Tiwari, the first NoSQL book in English from Wheelie Publishers. We have soon several databases in several weeks. I think it's not out, will take a few months more. And as I just mentioned, Martin Fowler is now dealing with NoSQL, and if Martin Fowler is writing about NoSQL, must be serious stuff, of course. But I think Mr. Sandelaj, he's doing the real work, and if you want to see him, and if you want to meet him, then come to Hamburg and talk to him and enjoy his talk. So many interesting applications that came out. We have Redis 2.6 is almost, I think, a week away. I think the Redis cluster will come. Hadoop 1.0, Cassandra 1.1. MongoDB in a super interesting version with MMS, Riak 1.1, of course, interesting stuff. And to me, most interesting is we have more than 1,000 hosting services in NoSQL. And I come to this at the end of this talk, NoSQL is getting a platform as a service standard, and this is very important, what I think. So we are all acting, if you're using NoSQL databases or if you're developing with those NoSQL databases, you're acting in a $14 billion market. This is what the latest research says, up to 2018. So scalability is everywhere, and I think we're having interesting talks on this. One funny thing I don't want to miss to mention is last summer, Oracle gave a lot of talks, and one talk was by Thomas Kurian. He said no to NoSQL. So what did he say last summer? He was saying in a white paper called Debunking the NoSQL Hype. NoSQL is a hype, of course. And what he was saying is NoSQL is something like an ice cream store with new flavors popping out every month. But don't get too attracted. These flavors may not be around for too long. So this is of course what the big guys have to say. Oracle, we want to say Oracle. Don't stick to NoSQL. It's all a flavor and it will vanish soon. So what happened a few months later? A few months later we saw Oracle integrating Hadoop and Cloudera, so core NoSQL stuff, into their big data appliance, and releasing the Oracle NoSQL database, which is a little Berkeley DB reloaded, but it is an interesting product. So they totally went the other direction. And if you're watching the industry, you see that hybrid solutions are popping out everywhere. Microsoft is integrating it into the server. Windows, Azure are all integrating Hadoop, Sybase, Greenplum, and all the others. They're jumping on the train too. Two interesting things that happen in the NoSQL market I want to mention because I think they will blow away a lot of products, or at least steal a lot of market shares. The first is, of course, the launch of Amazon DynamoDB. If you have not taken a look on it, please do so. Formerly, I think you know, at the AWS, you know they had SimpleDB, but I think with the launch of Amazon DynamoDB, SimpleDB use will decline. And what this is, as you know, they had papers published in 2007, but now they released their infrastructure. You can use it as a database, as a service solution, and it's very interesting. Why? Because it's a real strong database as a service solution. I made the interesting things yellow, so perhaps try to read them fast. It's based on SSDs. So what they try to do is make random access very, very fast and minimize the latency, as we will see on the next slide. No maintenance window, which is also interesting for me. For all the others who know AWS know that there are sometimes maintenance window. Synchronous availability, zone replication possible, backup and restore onto ES3 with one click, and 40 million requests per month free, so you can start, write Java, Ruby, and all the other code against it for free. And if you have real business running, of course, they want to earn money with you. But what they tried, this was for me interesting, to minimize the latency, because this is the problem. The same as, for example, database.com from Salesforce also has, if the database servers are not at the same location as your normal server, then you might have a network problem. So what you must do is minimize the latency, and the numbers they have, these are some statistics which have been done, is quite good so far. An interesting monetizing model, which is a little based on that writes are, of course, much more expensive because we're writing on SSDs, and as you know, writes are more costly on SSDs than reads. And yeah, a lot of more stuff. I want to dig very much into it. You can easily try it out on Amazon AWS. Just click through it and then create your data, create your model, fire in about 5 to 10 languages. Against it, you have a REST API, and yeah, you can develop using Eclipse, as you know, surely if you develop AWS services. And everything is fine except a few obstacles, like a data limit you don't have if you use other solutions like Cassandra or Riak. A little typing problems might be, and the API is not so good, and we need some DSLs, I think, for a wonderful interaction with this service. Yesterday I saw that a new book came out. It's free to buy on Amazon. You can read it on Kindle and in the web, so might be interesting for you. Just came out yesterday. The second interesting thing is SAP HANA, of course. I'm often asked about more information of SAP HANA, but I always have to say I don't have much information about it because SAP is not releasing much information, but at least we have an expert here in the second row, so if you have more questions about this, ask him. It's an in-memory database for analytics, and I hope they will offer more information. It talks something like SQL and MDX, which is an OLAP language, and then a lot of optimizations, and it's also saving so to disk. and storing on columns. So the general architecture, doing everything inline and then storing to disk with snapshots and logging is quite different to what Redis or MongoDB is doing. But of course, it's for analytics and based on a columnar DBS. So a little differences here. And yeah, did I forget something? Yeah, of course, distributed, a shared nothing architecture, and yeah, I mentioned almost everything. So this is quite important stuff, I think, which happened in 2012. And let's move on. I'm often asked for people who are not so deeply into NoSQL about the whys of NoSQL. Give me a checklist, what to look, when to use for NoSQL. And I wrote it down for you, 10 points. We can pass them quickly and then move on. To me, of course, why I like and why I love NoSQL is because NoSQL is specialization. And my strong recommendation to you is to look at the nosqltapes.com. Here's about 20-30 videos in there. Really interesting videos where you can learn a lot about the architecture. Perhaps here Andy Gross with Dynamo and React architecture and consisting hashing architecture. This is basic stuff you need to know and you want to see when dealing with NoSQL. So, yeah, the interesting thing is what to look for. And 2 years ago, we had Werner Vogels here from Amazon, and he was talking about what they did 3, 4, 5, 7 years ago. And they were 70% busy with scaling their stuff and 30% busy with doing their business. And of course, this is the wrong way. It should be the other way around, 70% business and 30% scaling. So what they did is, and this is the first recommendation out of 50 recommendations I have for you later, is look at your data. What is your data requiring? And what do you need? What is your query, for example? So they looked at their data and they saw 70% is only key value access. Perhaps it's a bit high for Amazon. If you're in another business, the ratio might be different. But if you have 70% key value access like Amazon has and 20% single table and only 10% of join stuff, then the big Oracle or relational hammer might not be the right solution. So what you see here is that you need several solutions. You need something like polyglot persistence. You need a solution for this, and you need a solution for this, let's call it complicated stuff at the end. So, what happened? We had the big data explosion, and many NoSQL solutions popped up as DynamoDB here, and all the models you already know. GraphDBs will be here to stay. Microsoft is even playing it with releasing a graph database, key value document, and big tables, columnar table stores, and so on. So in the 80s, 90s, everything was simple. We need to save space. That's why we need a relational model. We have to hammer everything into one database, and we scale up, not scale out. So everything was fine. So first reason, of course, your personal checklist is we have big data, terabyte, petabyte, simple scale out needed. And often people tell me, wow, big data, this is all hype. 99% of the companies, they don't have big data. But this is not my experience. I'm often doing consultancy in Western Germany about databases. And at least half of the companies, they're telling me we're interacting with the user. We need to check the log data. We need to make OLAP and predictions on the log data. We need to do machine learning on this. We need to know what the next step of the user is. And we have to deal with such huge data amounts so that big data is really there. So don't get confused if someone tells you big data is just a hype. It's not a hype, it's already there. And with the sensors in the next years, it'll be there. Then the next is massive write performance or write availability. So if you look like funny companies like Wuga, for example, here in Berlin, they're under the top 10 in Facebook for Facebook games. And they need massive write performance, write availability, and they also have a look on putting specific data into NoSQL solutions. Of course, we need sub-second responses. We all are used to it when we're acting in the web, creating filters or something like that. We want to have sub-second responses. Fast key value access, and we come to this later. You see a million companies here which need fast key value access, and I show you some examples later in detail. While number 5 is flexible schema, flexible data types. If you talk to the industry, you hear more and more that alter table and a shutdown for 3 hours, so a maintenance window is not possible. We can't do it. So there must be a workaround. We must be able to handle flexible schema and perhaps pushing some problems to a higher level. But if you have good strategies in schema design and schema handling, then you can solve all the problems. I'm sure of that. Easier maintainability, administration, operations. For example, here Wuga again. One game in the early stage is just 2 Redis instances with 2 replicas, and that's it. So they have some clever tricks and some specific requirements for their games they're doing in Facebook. And of course, no single point of failure, up 24/7. This relates to the earlier point. These are numbers. What happens if Google, Amazon, and Yahoo are out for 1 minute? But these are the numbers from 2008. So I'm sure you can put a 0 here at the end to get a feeling for what the loss is if these companies, if their service is not working for 1 hour. Programmer ease of use, of course, so something like auto-scaling, production, scaling from the start, REST interfaces, easy installations, APIs, and of course monitoring, and we'll come to operational issues in a few slides. And the last, point number 10 for me is changing CAP needs. I hope you all know the CAP theorem. It's well known, but it's a little more difficult, but this is another talk. Many customers tell me, at the beginning of the discussions, the customers tell me, of course, we need ACID, and we have the most terrible queries in the world. So, and if you then discuss with them and analyze, you often see that they had a relational database, they're hammering something in, of course, and if they hammered something in and everything is normalized, of course, then they need sophisticated queries, but it doesn't have to be. So if you can reinvent your persistence layer, you're in a good position and possibly can split areas between this. And of course, you have to think of your consistency models, because there are 10, 20, 30 consistency models out there. You have to keep in mind when looking at your data. So we have over 22 databases, at least 140 databases on my webpage, NoSQLdatabase.org, which is the most popular list of NoSQL databases in the world. And what we are doing and what we often recommend is the following. What you should do and what we should do is value these solutions, look what are the advantages, their disadvantages, their typical use cases, their typical access patterns, and then draw something like some spider diagrams from it. So make an evaluation of these databases. This evaluation is about half a year old, but it might be still a little valid to look what you need here on the right-hand side, or what could be the best NoSQL database on this side here. This last is Elasticsearch. And then you get a little further, but this is not the ultimate step. So what you do is, my recommendation, and I hope you haven't seen these slides still, is I worked a lot, and this is a little my research on these. These are up to 50 criteria you have to have a look on when deciding for the right database. So please read it fast. I'm sure you can. Have a look at it. First, you should analyze your data. We had this before when looking at the Amazon case. What is your data crying for, shouting for? Yeah? Which data storage model you need? What type-specific issues? What kind of ACID versus base or a mixture do you need of? I'm sure you all know ACID, basis. Base all your CAP decisions. What are your typical requirements? So, yeah, I already talked about this. Everyone is telling, yeah, we need ACID of course. But yes, we added a cache layer and a replication layer a few months ago because we needed to be faster. And so the thing about true ACID is becoming a little sloppy and things have to be rediscussed. Then is the performance dimension analysis. So latency, request behavior. If you want to scale up, scale out. Query requirements. As I say, what I see in the industry is they're hammering everything into relational databases. I've seen even graph data hammered into a normalized model, and then they're wondering why they need such sophisticated queries and why this will not perform. The architecture, the data access patterns, a very, very important point, and a lot of non-functional requirements. Of course, if I go into a company, mostly the first thing what they're telling me is, yeah, we have an Oracle contract for the next 3 years, so yeah, we should use it, and let's think about it later. This is what I hear in consulting. All other things as company restrictions, there are always people telling you 2 databases, 3 different databases. No, it's not possible. So you have a big bunch of trade-offs in this area. This is here for the old relational world, normalized ACID, CA versus AP in the CAP theorem, scale up, scale out, or link-alike queries, SQL, or some kind of limited queries. But the discussion has to go much, much deeper, and I do this with the customers. For example, what is better? Should you use a consistent hashing architecture or use a sharding architecture? Because both can have its pros and cons. It's really hard to find out what is better here. Some say consistent hashing is always better, but I don't believe this. Perhaps in most cases, but not always. So, some words on operations. In NoSQL a few years ago, we had some problems with operations because the tools were not good. And the older slides I always showed the case. I don't know if you know the Foursquare case. Perhaps you know the Foursquare service. I haven't tried it out on your mobile phone. It's like cool locations, and teenies can tag those locations and Twitter about it. Hey, this is cool to eat, cool to dance, I don't know. Very impressive service, and what they did is they took some EC2 node, and if you're using in-memory operations and not monitoring good enough, then someday things will crash somewhere. So NoSQL had a problem there because the monitoring and all the things you need to keep things in productions were not available the way you like it. This is all an example for MongoDB because I started here with the problems and the failures of MongoDB. But nowadays it's gone better because the industry jumped off it. You have MMX, you simply can register and get monitoring statistics out of the clouds for free. There are a lot of services by other vendors like Chef and Puppet, and monitoring as a server is there, server densities. So there are 1,000 services where you can really ensure that things will work properly. But you can go on, and I often had some discussions. I had one time a discussion with Andy Gross because he says operational cost trumps everything. So what React, for example, is saying, of course, that you need a consistent hashing architecture because everything is distributed equally. You have a replication instances here, and you will have no problems with this kind of architecture, or less problems than when using different architectures like used in MongoDB or Redis. But the next step, where I predict it will go to, will be not only here using those APIs, those monitoring at the servers. The next step will be the no-ops, will be that you are using all this in the cloud if it fits your model. Meaning, if you have a look at the platform as a service models today, for example, Cloud Foundry, OpenShift, .cloud, Heroku, I'm sure you're all familiar with these platform as a service tools. Then you see this is your stack, and you simply drop these services in. You have a free amount, trial amount of dealing with it, and then you have your system up and running, and it scales automatically. I don't know if it fits your need, but this is the way it goes. No operations. So my recommendation to you is, of course, check hybrid solutions. As I said, when looking in the industry, what they're doing is they're starting with relational databases without thinking about their data models, about their query needs, about their data access patterns, and about all the stuff. And then they see at first, oh, we're getting too slow. Then we're adding memcache later and running again on all these problems these companies usually have. So, 2 examples. What you see in the industry are these mixed polyglot solutions. For example, this is Instagram. You all know Instagram was hot and new in the media. What they're using is, for one part of their data, PostgreSQL, the S3 services for their bulk data, of course, for their images. And then they're using Redis because, you can read this. Because it fits, it has quick key value lookup, fits in memory, is persistent, and so you segment your data. And this is one solution. Instagram, you have many other solutions. Pinterest is very, very popular. I don't know if you have seen it. And they're all using these polyglot architectures, using about 2 to 3 databases, and each data gets its best fit in a database. So, but to conclude a little, the world is a little more complicated, unfortunately, and I don't know if you have seen this picture before from the 451 group. It shows the state of the database world now, and as you can see here, this is a NoSQL area with key value stuff, big tables, document databases, graph databases. We have the old relational world here with, these names. This is the analytic part. MySQL is here. Then the real operational, not analytic part here. And then a complete new area is coming out, NoSQL. I will also talk on this, get into this deep on GOTO Copenhagen. NoSQL, a lot of databases where they said, okay, it's true, the relational world has a scaling problem. Let's do something about it. Write new databases as, I don't know, VaultDB, Datas.com, and NuoDB, all this stuff. And this is really interesting, hot stuff if you need async SQL and the relational model. And a lot of more databases, but this is the complex state of the world, and it will explode more and more. Nothing will vanish, like in programming languages. We are still dealing with Fortran and COBOL, so this, this will explode and explode. So conclusion, though, there's no one perfect solutions. Check out hybrid and polyglot solutions. I'm sure we will hear more about polyglot solutions. And NoSQL is the new way to go. This is my recommendation. Okay, to conclude, I want to announce again these 2 conferences. The GOTO conference has fantastic speakers here like Andy Gross, Peter Idestad-Almqvist from Sweden, who really wrote a cool database, Rich Hickey, perhaps the Clojure creator, many other, Salvatore Sanfilippo, the Redis author. And this is NoSQL Matters. It's in Cologne in 2 weeks. We have discount codes for all these conferences, so if you want to have a discount codes to visit these conferences, so talk to us and we'll give you these discount codes. Okay, after these 3 talks, we would like to invite you to have a free beer in, I don't know, it's the Schubke here. It's right across Tegler Ecke Triftstraße, so only 2 minutes away from here. You're invited. I would be happy if you talk to us and having a little fun in the evening. So, thanks for listening, contact me, and have a nice evening.